We are going to continue on with Lab 7, which is reviewing a filled prescription. So in Lab 6, we actually looked at the prescription order, but now we're going to look at comparing the prescription order to the actual label. So the objectives are to gain the skills necessary to compare a processed prescription with the printed label for completeness and accuracy, and identify the practices to correct errors on a printed label that's generated from prescriptions. So you already understand the prescription's the primary means by which the prescriber communicates with the pharmacy staff. An accurate interpretation of the prescription is crucial to maintaining patient safety. The prescriptions must be frequently reviewed to ensure the information that is properly interpreted and accurately transcribed into the patient profile. It's important that whenever you are presented with a prescription, no matter what the stage of the filling process you're focused on, you review that prescription for accuracy. So, when to review a prescription? So you're going to review the prescription when it comes to the drop-off window. Then we're going to look at it again after it's transcribed, and then again after the label is generated by the filling technician. So here we have the prescription for Amila Gupta, and the date of the prescription was 2/16/15. Her address, checking for date of birth, DEA number, because lorazepam is a controlled substance, the dose that's being ordered, how many, the quantity, and then the SIG, how many refills, and it was signed by the doctor. So I want to look at this prescription label to make sure the information is complete. Now, when a prescription label is generated, it will be assigned a prescription number. A lot of people kind of refer to it as the refill number, but each prescription gets a unique identifying number. So the date that it's filled, so it happens that we filled it the same day it was written, and on here you see the original date for the prescription. If they waited a week, then the origination date should still be on there, because remember that prescription is only valid for 1 year from the date that it was actually written by the prescriber. So I'm looking for the patient's name. So that's on here. Their address does not necessarily have to be on a label, but a lot of computers are already programmed with that information, so it will generate. Same with date of birth. Now, what I'm seeing here, do you notice what the challenge is? I hope that you identified the SIG code. A patient's not going to understand that. It has to be written in common language for them to understand. So this has to be transcribed, not translated, but transcribed. So it should be 1 tablet by mouth every 4 to 6 hours as needed for anxiety. So they didn't type in their speed codes probably. They just typed in what was actually on the prescription. So then that would make this erroneous. Looking at it, lorazepam, the drug, 0.5 milligrams, that matches. When we select our medications and we're using barcode scanners or pull-down menus, it will identify our NDC number and who our manufacturer is. So Mylan is a manufacturer. The quantity to be dispensed, 120, that matches. The prescriber, does that match? Sanjuta Patel, yes, that matches. 5 refills, 5 refills. And that is the legal maximum for a benzodiazepine, which is what lorazepam is. It's a C4 drug. So a C4, you get 5 refills for 6 months. And then the technician's initials and the pharmacist's initials will generate on the label as well. So the 9-point check is a systematic approach. So looking through, as I've described on the previous prescription, looking for the patient's name, their date of birth, the date the prescription was written, prescription drug name, prescription drug strength, prescription drug quantity, label instructions, prescriber information such as their name, their address, their DEA number, the NPI number, and also refill information. Now, an NPI is a National Provider Identifier, and it's a unique 10-digit identification number that's issued to healthcare providers in the U.S., and it's provided by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So if it's going to be reimbursed with Medicare or Medicaid, the prescriber has to have one of those NPI numbers. Now, going through, these are checking for what's on that prescription to make sure that all of the information is there. The staff member that accepts the prescription at the drop-off window should do that 9-point check, and after the prescription is transcribed, it should be reviewed again. Then, after the label is generated, the information should be compared between the original order and the label. The filling technician is the pharmacy technician who's actually responsible for filling the prescription, getting the medication vial, counting, pouring, packaging, or labeling in the fill process. So take note, the number of refills on prescriptions are legally regulated. According to federal law, a Schedule II medication controlled substance can never be refilled. It has to have a new prescription, except in an emergency situation, and a pharmacist is the only person authorized to handle that. Controlled substances in the Schedules 3 and 4 may have up to 5 refills within a 6-month period, and non-controlled medications and controlled substances that are Schedule 5, according to federal law, have no limits on refills, which can be stated as PRN, provided the prescription has not expired. Generally, that's meant to be 11 refills in 12 months' time. Note that with both controlled and non-controlled medication, the prescriber can choose to prohibit refills or stipulate a maximum number of refills. In the state of Louisiana, all controlled substances, 3, 4s, and 5s, have a maximum of 5 refills allowed. So that's the state. We're a little bit more stringent than the federal government on that. If a mistake is identified, the incorrect information should be circled or highlighted and then brought to the attention of the technician who prepared the label. Now remember, this is not about being punitive or pointing out people's mistakes. It's about patient safety. And if mistakes are made and the person who made them is not aware, they just kind of go around doing the same thing and then later find out they've been doing something wrong and they're like, well, why didn't anybody tell me? I would have made sure I did it right. So it's not about being a tattletale or anything like that. Remember, it's always about patient safety. The technician who entered it should correct the error, or if that original tech is not available or unable to correct the error, the filling technician can correct the information and print a new label. The filling technician should verify that it is a corrected label, is accurate, they fill the prescription, and then they pass it on to the pharmacist for final verification. When you review prescriptions for controlled substances, remember that they have special characteristics that you need to verify and identify. That includes verifying the DEA number, looking at the restrictions on refills, looking at the dates when it was written, is it expired, and how much is being dispensed, what is the quantity that is indicated. So again, that 9 points check. So the name, we've got Amelia Gupta. We've got date of birth. We've got the date that the prescription was written, and we've got the drug name. So then I go over here. I've got my patient's name. I've got the date the prescription was written. I've got my patient's date of birth, and I've got the drug. We've got the drug strength, 0.5 milligrams, the quantity, 120, so 0.5 and 120. The SIG instructions, 1PO, Q4H, PRN anxiety, and over here we see that we've already decided that that's not correct for the patient label. The prescriber information, so we've got the doctor information on the prescription order, and we've got the doctor's name on the label. and then the number of refills. So 5 refills, and again, lorazepam is a C4, so its maximum refill allowable is 5. So keep in mind, the more people that are assigned to verify a prescription, the less likely it is that an error will occur. More eyes, patients much safer. So your contribution to this process helps ensure that patient safety. So going through Lab 7 in your book, through the procedure, you're going to review a series of prescriptions and printed labels that are going to be grouped together at the end of the lab. And your task is to verify the information on the printed label corresponds to the information on the written prescription. The textbook is written with federal guidelines in mind. However, you should ask your instructor about standards or regulations in Louisiana when you're completing the steps. So what you want to do is perform that 9-point check by comparing the printed label with the prescription. So you have the list of the 9-point check. If an error is present on the label, you're going to circle the error and clearly write in the correct information on the blank lines that are provided. So we've provided you in your lab manual binder copies of the worksheets that are in your lab book. Of course, they don't photostat very well, so they're not real clear, but those lines are perfect there. So you can look at the pictures in your book and then complete the assignment in the binder. So the first prescription here is for Vance Donaldson. So we have the prescription on one side and the label on the other. So you're going to go through that 9-point check. The second prescription is for Amala Gupta. And then you have a prescription for another prescription for Vance Donaldson. And Vance Donaldson, and Miguel Esperanza, and Kimberly Jackson, Marquita Wilkins, and Jeffrey Klein. So prescription number 8 is actually an e-script. So remember, with e-scripts, there's an extra step in there that you want to verify the transmission date and make sure that that's in line. So when is the 9-point check done? That would be D, both B and C, when the prescription is first received and after a prescription is transcribed. Which of these perform the 9-point check? That would be C, the pharmacy technician and the pharmacist. So that pharmacist is going to do it on that last step of the verification before we call the patients up to pick up their prescription. So in summary, the prescription is the primary means by which the prescriber communicates with the pharmacy staff. During the fill process, frequent reviews ensure the proper interpretation and accurate transcription from prescription to patient profile to help ensure patient safety. Their 9-point check is a systematic approach to verifying prescription data during the filling process. The fill technician is the last person to see the prescription prior to its final verification by the dispensing pharmacist. Controlled substances have special characteristics that must be verified: DEA number, correct number of refills, and the more people who are assigned to verifying, the less likely it is that an error will occur, because somebody will catch it. All right, the next lab is going to be Lab 9, where you will actually start to enter these prescription orders.